Hello everyone, and welcome to Andrew Broussard Watercolors. Today I'm going to continue experimenting with painting fast and loose figures. So I have the back of a painting here that I'm going to work on. It's a quarter sheet of Stonehenge Aqua, 140-pound cold press, 100% cotton, and the photo is from pexels.com. The photographer says Los Muertos crew. It doesn't say where they're from, but I'm going to be working from that. Now, I'll mention colors as I go along. I've just been mainly just exploring getting movement and depth within still life and portraiture and figures in watercolor, and just seeing what's attainable working with watercolors and working in this fast and loose fashion. Mixing up some raw umber and ultramarine. There is some buff Titan that had gotten onto my pigments, so that's there too, I think, in this mix. But I'm just going to put in gestural marks for the background. And we'll have our horizon line right about here. This is where the floor will meet the wall. And a few things I've been playing around with is vertical gestures for the background, angled gestures for the floor, where either you can come in on the side. With this one, I'm thinking I'll grab some raw sienna, go horizontal for this. Grab some burnt sienna, get a little warmer as we get closer. Even some strong light red oxide would probably help. Now that should be good enough. I've been taking the number 1 rigger, or the number 4, and rather than drawing out or sketching out with a pencil or masking fluid or anything like that, I've just been using the number 1 rigger and marking places. So with this, I'm just going to grab a mix Payne's Gray with whatever, mark the top of the head where I want it to be. So this is going to be for the woman on the left. I want her feet to be here. The gentleman alongside her, top of the head, his 1 foot, and then his other foot's going to come closer. With these portrait figure sketches, I've been kind of just using the 8-head method as kind of a guideline. I haven't looked up the 8-head method in quite a while, but it's described, I think I described it in a video about 2 years ago. But the Bridgman's Guide has it. There's also a 7-head method. And what I mean is you use 8 equally spaced marks to kind of place things out, or 7.5 head, which is 7.5 equally spaced marks. So top, middle, bottom, 1, 2, 3. That gives me 4 equally spaced. 2, 3. I think I need to about there, about here. Good enough. Gives me kind of guidelines for the gentleman. Here, his middle between the two would be a little bit higher. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. One of the issues that I have been experiencing since I'm doing kind of sketches and vignettes is that working with the paper and just wetting that one portion, I get buckling that I have a hard time flattening out. If I was to wet all around, it'd be a lot easier. Use a paper towel this time to get a little bit of my white back. I'm not going to get much white back, it seems like, but just give me an idea for the forms. Okay, here's some yellow ochre. Use that to kind of map out some the head, the shoulder, elbow, the waist. I had made it a little too high, so I'll have the hip come out here. Comes down, dress, there, the foot coming out like that. All right. We'll mark this other one down as well. This foot is lifted. This right here is going to be our important mark, the hip, and then how it forms with that elbow. I think that's the important space. Now for the gentleman, I'm going to kind of draw in that negative space between them. About here. The face comes across here. So while I mark this off, okay, her chin is lower than his shoulder. Then his hip is higher, the lower back a little bit higher right there. Then we come out with the coat. Coat comes here. We have the foot. We have that other leg here, and then comes out. You can see that it's kind of dry brushing because I had lifted the water out of those spots. His shoulder, chin, elbow, hand. Kind of just creating little angles and triangles. So to kind of reiterate, I've been experimenting with just trying to get the depth and the feel of movement. One painter that I greatly admire, a master painter, Boldini, with his figure paintings in oils, had just an amazing amount of movement, and they just looked absolutely beautiful. And it's something that I would like to somehow obtain just a glimmer of that within watercolor. Let's just use Payne's Gray. I could probably switch my brush now that I have kind of things mapped out. I want to put more pigment down. We have a highlight here. I'll pull back. Then we have his dark. We could probably mix raw sienna with this. Payne's gray to kind of get the color of his coat. So that's a raw sienna, Payne's gray mix. Just a watered down wash of vermilion. Start putting the heads in place. As you can see, I have that buckling here, and I'm thinking next time I'll just wet the whole paper throughout, even if I'm not using the whole paper. His coat came down too low. Or I can extend his legs. I think that's what I'll need to do. Payne's gray. In a moment, we'll do a dry off. Let's see where we can go with things. Here's some yellow ochre. Just start putting in a little bit of flesh ideas. Before I do a dry off, Payne's gray, we'll start putting in the black of the hair. And it's going to bleed, and nothing I can do about that, but I'll just let that movement happen and take advantage of it. The foot coming up. The yellow ochre is a little too sickly, I think, but we'll mellow it out later on. Vermilion for that highlight of the dress right there. Payne's gray for the darker side. So it looks like my light's coming from the right. I'll start grounding the figures with shadow. Okay, let's pause and we'll do a dry off. All right, so it's pretty dried off. I think that something like this would potentially be acceptable if it was smaller and had other elements within it. The dry brush stage, or this other stage after I do that whole wet and wet, is where I start getting myself in trouble. But I think it's good because that's the stage that I really need to explore. Here's some of that Titan buff Titan, vermilion. Creating that piece of fabric on her dress. And then Payne's gray. I'm trying not to touch the two piles of water together. I don't want them to bleed one into the other. I'm going to use this time to bring his coat up a little bit. That's the kind of slit in the tail of the coat. Just dry brush a little bit of texture there. Bring that elbow. And I think I was using raw sienna. Yeah, I was. Raw sienna with that Payne's gray for the color for his coat. That's the top of his coat. Then he has the white collar. Come back to Payne's gray, raw sienna mix. Payne's gray. shoe in. Yeah, it's kind of a, I think I mentioned it in the other videos. I've looked at the Bridgman's Guide, the section on fabrics, and I don't have it completely memorized or stored down pat, but Bridgman separates fabrics into about 7 different potential folds that it can happen based off of how the material itself is interacting with the body underneath it, whatever it's hanging from. And continually rereading that and looking at that and looking at folds in fabric will eventually get things working good. Shoes. Bridgman's has a lot of information, but I just find that texts that are about 100 years old are just written in a fashion where there's a lot of assumptions taking place, and it's hard for me to comprehend. I've just been kind of mapping with the Payne's Gray while I've been blabbing. Let's grab Buff Titan. Our hands will be right in here. So I'll do Buff Titan and Yellow Ochre and Vermilion. That's going to be my more flesh tone. I think the hands are going to be the important thing. And that elbow coming down, which I had talked about. I don't think I'm really going to put faces in. I'll put the idea of them. I get some dry brush, gestural marks. That highlight. A lot of the highlights are on this side of the fella, and then just subtly catches the part over her knee, and then it goes dark. Yep, Hammy agrees. Yeah. Okay, let me pause for a dry off. We'll see how things are looking. All right, using the blow dryer gave me a moment to stand up and look at it. I want to really bring this dress out. Then want to mix that with the raw sienna. A little bit more shadows down. I think this is a cobalt blue, just a synthetic. In the wearer's hair. Variety of tones. We could probably play around with bleed proof white now. So one last dry off and we'll just kind of touch things up. All right, so before I bust out the bleed proof white, I'm just gonna grab a little background color with the hake with the hake brush. So just burnt sienna, sorry, raw umber. I feel like there should be some marks back here. Something should be right there. Is that too much? Too warm? Possibly. Just take a wet squirrel mop. Okay, we'll grab the rigger number 1. Bleed proof white. Okay, so the shoes, the pant leg, coat, the arm, the collar, highlight on the hair, and the knee, and this leg that comes out right there. And maybe a little dry brush, see if we can put a little light on that. I think we'll stop it at this. So, I hope you enjoyed. I've been just playing around with different things. I've been under the weather. We have a lot of sinus infections going around. So I've just been working on just little sketches whenever I get a chance. So if there's anything you'd like to see, let me know. Please like, subscribe, follow. If you want to follow along with anything, you're more than welcome to. And feel free to tag me on social media. And I'll post a picture of this and the link or the original picture up on Patreon if you'd like to follow along. All right, y'all have a great day. Take care.